Good afternoon, everyone. It seems that Dario always gave me the very nice tasks to first in the morning to make sure everyone is awake. Yeah. Now after lunch to make sure that all the blood is going from the stomach to the head. So welcome back. Before we start our discussion, I would do a short round of introductions. Maybe starting with you, Ruben.
Yes. So hello, everyone. My name is Ruben. I'm one of the co-founders of KWARTS and responsible for growth.
Good afternoon, everyone. Philippe, Kirby. I work for MSD, and I'm responsible for customer engagement capabilities globally, which means that I play an interface role between business and with IT, and know enough to keep them both honest.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bart from Proeyen. I'm also founder of KWARTS, CEO, and active for the product within the company, product strategy.
Hi, everybody. My name is Shay. I'm from Novartis, the area of the DevOps and digital architecture, and nice to meet you. Happy to be here.
And for the good observers, you will have heard a specific accent coming 3 times back. This is the Flemish accent, so there are 3 Flemish guys here on the stage. Sorry for the others.
Please don't switch to Flemish.
Yeah. Okay, so before we start, because it's about artificial intelligence, which is resonating, as you can hear. So artificial intelligence, but before we go there, I would like someone of you to explain, okay, what is now the link between deep learning, machine learning, artificial intelligence, because there's a lot of confusion when I'm listening to discussions that people are using these terminologies not always in the right way. So to make sure everyone is aligned, can someone, and I think Bart, you are the volunteer.
Yeah. I'll explain. So deep learning is in fact a family of data science machine learning where you stack models on one another. So you first try to predict weights, for example, of a model, that then the weights can then predict the outcome, for example, increased prescriptions of a physician based on activities that you do in terms of detailing. So that's deep learning. Machine learning then takes those models and pre-processes models, creates data science algorithms, while artificial intelligence really tries to mimic human reasoning. And with artificial intelligence, there is no pre-processed algorithm. So you just start off with a blank sheet, and then based on the data, based on the outcome that you generate, you then fine-tune the models further. So that's the difference.
I'm glad you handled that question.
I spent the full morning studying. So
now we're all on the same page. So it's one of these new buzzwords, artificial intelligence and all these related terms. So why do we need that in the pharma, and how, at the end of the day, will that impact customer experience? Because that's what we want to drive. So maybe I start with you, Philippe.
Yeah, thank you. So if we think about some of the things that were being said over the last, day and a half now, and I talk a lot about augmented capabilities, I truly think that is where AI can really help, is with that augmentation. And certainly when it comes to AI as applied to augmentation and customer engagement, it's been mainly with the field force in the past. Yep. But I'm actually convinced that it's still part of the future. I do not believe, I was asked a question yesterday, if the field forces, or when the field force would disappear. And I don't think they ever will. I think there's always going to be a role for customer-facing employees, as you might want to call them more generically, whether it be MSLs or key account managers or whatever, to still orchestrate the activity with customers, with AI assisting them, especially with the wealth of data that we're now generating nowadays that we can actually parse through.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I will take it to another direction about the AI. As we go further, the technology, the things are changing, the future is coming. AI for the pharma is something relatively new, but it's not new in the outside world, so it's coming. And the AI is coming to help us to deal with the massive amount of information that is coming. The pharma need to deal with lots of patients, lots of data input, lots of different segments, and the AI is the place that can help the pharma to get into it.
Okay, Ruben?
Well, I would like to confirm what Shay just said. So the amounts of data that are being generated in our industry, they grow exponentially. And so for an individual person to understand what is relevant just for me, I want to engage in HCP, I want to do something, I want to make new content, what is compelling for my audience, then it is good to have those kind of technologies to help you understand what it is about, so to give you that extra nudge that you need to make sense of the data. This is where I see the biggest role for AI.
Bart, you want to add something?
I just want to confirm also that AI is not just the data, it's also about the human that needs to work with it, but also the human that needs to provide input to it. So I think it's a combined job of both data and human intelligence. And that, I think, is maybe the biggest hurdle or roadblock for many companies to get started.
Yeah, we'll come back to that later. And Philippe, you mentioned one of these famous misconceptions, it will replace the human beings or the sales force. So let's dig a bit deeper into that aspect. Why is it, first of all, why is it there is so many misconceptions about what AI is and what it can do? And how do we sort that out? How do we clarify this, that really people understand what its role is? So Shay, I start with you.
The way I see it, I'm coming from the IT perspective, or in Novartis we call it the technology transformation. I changed the name from IT to TT. The biggest misconception that AI is a buzzword. It's like I'm coming now from the world of DevOps, before it's engineering. AI means a lot of things, and the biggest conception I think that companies will come and say, I want to implement AI in my company, just for a project or some money and let's make it happen. It's not that. It's not a silver bullet. It's not just plug and play and it works. There is a lot of heavy lifting need to be done in order that AI will be successful and give some value. You need to understand what it's AI for the specific business or specific use case, because it's like, back to my domain now of the DevOps, people asking what is DevOps, and it's different meaning to different people. So the same as AI.
Yeah. Philippe?
So, beyond what you just said about AI replacing humans, and there was an interesting quote on LinkedIn a few days ago. It was Davidek, so I think we all know who a Davidek is by now, but he said that AI will not replace humans, but certainly sales reps that use AI will probably replace those that don't. So that's certainly one thing. But I wouldn't want us to think that it's a silver bullet. Right? It's not going to be a silver bullet when it comes to making any kind of decisions vis-a-vis how we work with customers and how we determine value, but it's going to contribute a lot to understanding, to learning about our customers, and then being able to generate that value that they're looking for to engage with us.
Yeah.
Yeah, so to expand on that, the great thing about it is an extra tool that we can put in our toolbox. So it will make more things possible, but in the end, it still needs to be operated and it still needs to be dealt with in a correct way. And we all know the principle, garbage in, garbage out. If you feed your AI with a lot of bad data, you're going to get bad results, and the impact of the AI will be very limited. So I think there it is important to anchor this within an organization to understand what it is, what it will do, and what it needs to perform to the best of its capabilities.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think AI as the toolbox is only just the top of the iceberg of the methodology. So before you can really get going with it, master data management, getting content calibrated, getting content quality good. This is like the magic recipe of any AI model. It doesn't, the model is not something where you will make the biggest difference. You will make the biggest difference in the ingredients of it. So I think that's, over the last years also our major lesson learned.
Yeah. So we have been discussing already also today and yesterday the importance of working across the company boundaries. So I have the luxury here to have quite an interesting mix, being someone representing the business, IT, and the vendor side. So let me magically connect your brains. And could you pop up a kind of an ideal kind of scenario how a proper AI implementation should look like? I've connected your brains, so you need to decide which brain starts talking.
Is this an RFP?
Okay, who wants to go first?
So I think the connection is the first thing. You said it. I mean, true. It's. I don't think anybody can solve this on our own. So I was mentioning earlier that I'm actually an interface between business and IT, right? And and I think it's been actually said over the last few days, which is you need to connect it to a business problem that you're trying to solve. What are we trying to solve for? So the most common application is next best action, which is coined as NBA. And by the way, for everybody's understanding, the NBA is the National Basketball Association. Call it next best engagement, if you will, or we're calling it next best experience. But right, so that's one application. But there's so many other things that we could be doing, again, with the amount of data that we have. So I think this is where you can connect, and I think the partnership and the cross-functional type way of working to solve for these business problems. So we take a business problem, then we put some information together and solve it, is one way of doing it. So very close partnership with IT, super important. So can hand over to you from there. But I think it's also important, and it's one of the reasons I'm here, is to get some external thinking.
Okay.
To get some vendors are not just vendors, they also have thought leadership in certain areas. And you'd be a fool not to take advantage of that in one form or another.
See, it's a smart brain. The business starts talking, then we go to IT.
So from the area, from the perspective of the IT, the example for good implementation of AI in the past that I can bring from a previous company, I work also in Teva Pharmaceutical. So it's about understand what we have today in the landscape, what data point we have, what kind of information we have in place. The companies, I think, need to build their own capabilities, basic capabilities to understand what is AI, what is the data, what is data lake, how they can create those activities, and then one in two parallel pillars. One pillar is the pillar of managing the data that you have in-house and understand how you can bring the next steps with this data. And second, that I think is very important, is to work together with external vendors, external companies, like, for example, the company here, that will plug into your data and try to bring additional value and additional activities or additional insight for what you have, because you coming from your industry, you have the knowledge and the perspective specific to your specific company, not all the pharma company.
Mm-hmm.
And those companies, they are new, they are brilliant, and they bring a lot of ideas that you don't have. And by working on those two pillars, you can get a success.
Yeah. So the business has convinced IT, and IT say, okay, we are going to make this happen. And they reached out to a vendor. So the vendor comes in, and what do you have to say?
I think as a vendor, what is always like the first question is, what's the use case? What is the situation without? What should be the situation with the new solution? Because if not, it makes no sense to involve a vendor. So for us, it's really important to get grip on what exactly do we need to improve. One simple example, I was at my general medicine, I asked her, how did you appreciate your last pharmaceutical contact? And she said, like, what if ever they would be more scientifically relevant and stop doing these promotional activities with me, because I'm not interested in this. And then that's an interesting use case, but we also meet that with our pharma clients, where we see that currently medical information is much more being used also in commercial contexts to really passionate physicians around the topic. And then indeed we have, for example, in this case, a use case to start working with NLP techniques, whatever, to see like how can we learn from MSL data and use that to the benefit of better commercial detailing. So I think it's a world where everything is interconnected. So.
Yeah.
Terminology use cases become very, very common.
Yeah, it's something we can come back on later, because I would later ask anyone here to give a kind of a real example you've seen where it has been done properly. Because when I was on the business side, the tendency to skip steps was quite, how would I say that in a positive way? So it was really something where we're looking at, let's do AI, but if you even don't master properly the machine learning and your data and etc. So what are all the key steps you really need to do before you can even think about starting to use AI?
I think you mentioned quite a lot of the important points already. It's like having a common understanding of like what is the problem that we're trying to solve, like scoping it right, so not aiming too big, like not making it too complex, but building trust within the organization, so like that IT knows it, business is convinced, commercial excellence is on board as well, like it is within scope for the vendor as well. So making sure that it works and then gradually increasing the complexity and taking it further. So like these implementations, they're rooted in partnership, in a deep understanding of the infrastructure, the technology, the organizational ambitions, and then taking that further. So like it requires an understanding and a relationship.
Yeah.
I could go next. So we heard also the triptych people, process, technology quite a lot over the last couple of days. I would say it slightly differently. It's also about mindset, skill set, and tool set.
Yeah.
And kind of in that order. And you talked about, it's also about the human side of things. And so that's where I think is the main responsibility of the business, is to address that more mindset, skill set side of things. So how do we get the mindset focused on customer experience and how AI can help? But also some very basic things that you need to invest in, especially if you're thinking about it globally, which is, do we have a common language? Do we speak the same language? And that's where taxonomy comes in, and actually starting to establish taxonomies for tagging, whether it be your web assets, whether it be your emails, whether it be your content, so that you can actually return some meaningful insights from every engagement that you have with your customers, and you can actually compare insights across the globe and say, I can use that.
Yeah.
I can actually develop a best practice. And it's not just about sharing the best practice, but I can then implement it very quickly. So there's a much more, the call to action and ability to get something done on a global scale is much more rapid.
Which brings us back to IT.
I can really relate to everything that I said. What I can add for this is that I think that a good AI journey should start with strong leadership in the organization. We need, or you need, to create a very, very bold vision where we want to get, but in parallel also what is called the head in the sky, feet on the ground. So you have a bold vision, you know that you want to go to the next Amazon or next Netflix of the pharma company, and this is where you want to go. In parallel, where we are today, what is the feet on the ground, where we are starting, and then starting to build the journey, working together, full collaboration in the business. And when I mean collaboration with the business, so the business is not my customer, and I am not his vendor. We are partner, working together.
Absolutely.
In the same project, working together, running this through, and understand that this is not a project like, I don't know, from the pharma CapEx project that need to end after 6, 8, 9 months. This is the journey, this is a year journey that need to change the mindset, the way of thinking, the way of approaching things, and continue with this going forward and forward and forward.
Yeah, I fully agree.
That's a very short answer. I would like to bring another kind of misconception to your attention and know what you think about it. What I've heard quite often is that AI is unbiased. What is your take on that? Is that correct or is that not correct?
Every data point is biased. You just need to filter the noise out.
Why is it biased?
One simple example. Have you ever looked into the logs of sales reps that log key messages and reactions? You often see like there are answering patterns just because it's part of the KPIs. So maybe variety of these logins should also be part of the KPIs.
Yeah.
Just one example.
Yeah, trying to think. I think it's different from you. I think it's a bit unbiased because the AI will take you. The way I think, or the way I see it anyway, the AI will bring you 80% of accurate. Don't take me by numbers, but 80% of accurate information according to what has been done, learning in the past, future prediction, etc., etc. But still, there is another 20% that this is where we need to focus our human force there.
Yeah.
But on the 80%, I think it's unbiased. Just taking the information, put it into channels, and according to future knowledge, past knowledge, future prediction, create what is going on.
Philippe, what is your take on this?
Yeah, it's a slippery slope, that question. But having said that, I think it's, we need to avoid the black box effect of not understanding how this kind of works. I mean, I'm not saying that, I'm certainly not a data scientist, and certainly not an expert, even if I have some experience, but how do we avoid the black box effect and really again, learn from every interaction in the model? So if we can actually do that and associate the people who are using the technology to, yes, mining the process, learning, and I think, we were talking about this a little bit earlier, it's not going to happen overnight, right? Anything you do with AI, you need to build up some history, you need to tap into your different data sources, and it takes a while before you start getting any meaningful insights. And so you need to be able to look at that and say, okay, what's influencing these results? So is this trend telling me something or is it not? And do I need to do something? And there was a lot over the last couple of days about, I will avoid the word pilots, but let's call it experiments, but on a lower scale. So fail fast, as Chetak said. So I think this is one thing that you can do to take bias out of the system, is not just letting it guide you. We're back to this thing that AI is complement to what you do and not something that's taking over.
So, and I think that's coming back to what already has been said. So this holistic approach will help also doing that, because I've seen personally certain things coming out and say, come on guys, this is too crazy for us. But people that do not have the background who are defending this output, so this critical kind of as you were saying it, challenging certain outputs and correct on it, is cutting out this bias. I had one last question, but I see the time is already gone. But I will ask the question, and people can take it with them, is because we've been talking about data, the importance of data, make them as unbiased as possible, and at the end, give us some actionable kind of insights. And it's something that also David pointed out is every company has its data. Going back to bias, and so many companies sitting here, bringing all this data together and using it for our own purposes, why is that not happening? Because I believe there already you could see a lot of biases sitting depending on what is the goal of the company. So why don't we do that?
Yep. That's a very relevant point. I mean, if you look at the question of HCP engagement, if there would be like a universal repository, say, with all the neurologists in Europe or in the US and like what their preferences are, it would benefit everyone that is engaging these people because there would not be friction anymore. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. And you could focus on distinguishing yourself through having like, the best possible content, the best possible experience for those customers, rather than figuring out what they want. So I think it makes a lot of sense, but it requires working together. It requires coordination. And there needs to be a willingness as well to pursue those initiatives.
So, Shay, Philippe, very short, what is?
Yeah, it's, so I would not necessarily answer the question.
Yeah, I understand.
But give a thought to this, which is, again, somebody said a little bit earlier yesterday, we're all taking different approaches to get to the same outcome, right? So should we not be trying to do something different, or should we not be focusing on something different? Another example is I saw a DT Associates report where they were saying Pharma exactly that, are investing in all the same things. Virtual events was top of the list. Customer experience was at the bottom of the list. So,
says a lot.
you know, maybe we should shift that around a bit, because if we're all doing virtual events, we're not doing anything different. And then, then back to the question. Well, AI maybe is not only applicable to customer engagement, but to other areas. And Loda planted this idea in my brain yesterday, challenging me not to think about next best engagement only, but how about regulatory? How about content approval? How about all these things which are real bottlenecks and pain points in our processes?
Yeah. Agree. Shay, you want to add something?
Yeah, sure. I can understand why companies will want to save their own data and not to share. I can understand from where it comes in, but with a very big, bold but for this. For example, in the coronavirus that just everyone happened in the last 2 years, the collaboration between the information that came and give all the collaboration that happened between all the scientists, because I was hearing the chief scientist of Moderna speaking about how they received the data and how in no time they were able to skip a lot of phases because of the collaboration. So the future should be that collaborate the data and create working together. All together, it's a challenge.
So AI still a bit high. So, gentlemen, thank you very much for this very interesting discussion.
Thank you.
Let's make place for the others.
Thank you, Dirk.
Thank you, Dirk.